masculine is the mountain, the feminine is the river. One holds, one flows. Inside you is both. But what happens when the mountain crumbles or the river dries up? Today we explore the sacred dance of inner balance and how reconnecting with both energies can help heal the war within. My name's Michael Perry, and today I'm with Justin, and this is the New Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the New Ashla Podcast. Today we're going to be diving into the masculine and feminine energies. Now, you hear this around a lot, and it's becoming more buzzwords than anything, but there's so much more to these energies than many people realize. So, Justin, I know you're pretty passionate about the masculine and feminine energies. How would you describe or define this?
I don't know if I'd use the word passionate, but I do like the idea, and it has served me well through lots of my years of learning different systems and philosophies and stuff, because they are found kind of in those layers. And of course, because a long time ago, that's how we understood things. We understood things. We were much closer to nature, so we looked at the moon and the sun a lot closer. We used them in lots of things, man and woman or male and female. We understood those to be not just kind of physical constructs of our bodies, but energies, because we tend to do things a little differently that kind of coalesced though, right? So, of course, in the way of Ashla, we understand and we believe that the universe and its many layers and these dynamic polarities, they create this harmonious flow.
Yeah.
And you find it within everything. That's what we believe.
Yeah. And everyone.
But to understand, we're not talking about a gender. That is a whole different thing. What we're talking about here are kind of energetic principles, if you will, that live within each of us, forming this foundation of balance and harmony. So, let's move gender out of the way and any other kind of scientific understandings of male, female, because right today we're talking about the energies and the soul.
Yeah. Well, and it's what these energies provide, what each one is good for, and finding balance of them within ourselves to help add to that level of authenticity and wholeness that is our mission.
Yeah.
And one thing to add as far as polarities, I mean, the universal laws, and that is one of the universal laws, the law of polarity, which is exactly this. It's yin and yang. It's found through many different texts.
Right. And in just about every system or philosophy, you can find something that, if not called feminine and masculine energies, it's there. You can see it pretty easy because there are these balancing factors in everything. So
well said. So I guess when we go into defining these things, when we look at like masculine energy, what is masculine energy?
So just kind of describe it like this. A masculine energy generally has more direction, or it's more purpose driven, right? It thrives under structure and order, and it kind of tries to build those things everywhere it goes and everywhere it is, even outside of us. Protection and provision to make sure that people are safe, that they're taken care of, generally associated with things like focus and discipline and forward movement.
Yes.
And the last one I could think of is this kind of will to act and create from its intentions. So it sees something and it says, okay, but I need this. And it starts looking around and it finds ways to do this. It creates things out of nothing.
Yeah. Well, it's great at following a path. It creates the structure. It shoots for the goal. It handles the obstacles when it comes our way. There's so much power within the masculine. And it's like you see this with a lot of the types like I talk about, like with nice guys. A lot of them dwell more into a wounded female and a feminine energy. And because of that, they don't have as much structure to their lives or as much determination to grow beyond themselves or to shoot for things that might involve conflict or controversy. It's a much more self-centered energy, and I don't mean that in a negative sense.
Right,
it's a much more self-driven energy. So the masculine is what helps propel you forward and creates your own autonomy in the world, which next to the feminine, which is more about community and provision and the whole unit, this is more self-serving energy. And I mean that in the best way possible.
Yeah. And of course the feminine energy, we have these things that balance out the things that we just said, right? The feminine energy is very intuitive and very receptive. It's very nurturing and compassionate, and it's present. It's here. I'm here. Here I am.
Yeah.
It flows and adapts, and it contains great a great amount of emotional depth, like an
Yes.
ocean, right? So the feminine tends to create through surrender and allowing things to move when it needs to, versus the masculine energy that creates from their intention. The feminine energy tends to create by surrendering to what is and what's happening and allowing things to kind of manifest.
Yeah,
And of
to
course,
adapt.
yep, adapt. And of course, the last one I have for this is inner wisdom, feeling, connectedness.
Yes.
So
Intuition.
intuition, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and when you stack these things two next to each other, it's like, wow, they're very opposite. Well, that's good because they need to fill in the spaces for the other. They need to
Yeah.
coalesce
That's
and
the
connect.
polarity right there, right?
That is. That is.
One of the best simple analogies that really helped me wrap my head around this when I first started down this path is the masculine is the logic based thinking and the feminine is the emotional based thinking. And both are important.
Yes.
And there's also the shadow sides of these when we talk about wounded feminine, wounded masculine. I mean, the wounded masculine is the shadow side of that. It's controlling, it's rigid, it's emotionally disconnected. It wants dominance over others or to control
Mhm.
situations. And in turn, with a wounded feminine, you have chaos, manipulation, possessiveness or passiveness, codependency. And I mean, these things show up both feminine and masculine in all of our lives. And the
Right.
awareness is what allows us to start developing that integration and acceptance of these parts.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I just want to say this that these aren't tied to biology. We're talking about the soul, the universe, the flow, the yin yang, as you said earlier. These are actual elemental aspects of existence for a soul, right?
Yeah.
The sun and the moon, fire and water, sky and earth. These are all these polarities that we're talking about. And every soul carries both. And the goal, as we'll get into it later, is not to favor one or the other, but to cultivate that harmony between the two. And that's the only way to become whole as a being, is to integrate these two together, right? So the structured, I'll just put it to you like this: the structured stillness of the masculine supports that fluid movement of the feminine. They complement each other. They fill in the gaps for each other.
Well, and
And
it's like, go ahead. One of the things I've really noticed, and it's another analogy I love, and I've seen it flourish in my relationship, because when me and Allison first got together, I was operating from a more wounded feminine, she was operating from a wounded masculine sort of approach to life. And through our relationship, I've been able to create a safe container for her. The masculine acts as a container, which allows the feminine to flow and grow and flourish.
Mhm.
And through creating that safe space where she can be vulnerable, she can express her emotions and her creativity, she's flourished as a person. And in turn, she's given me the ability to be that strong, assertive person who's making decisions in the relationships and is creating a safe environment for her, which is
Yeah.
allowing her to do that. So it's helped heal my masculine and heal her feminine.
Right. No, that's, yeah. And again, masculine energy is the energy of doing
Yes.
stuff, of bringing thoughts into actions and visions into form, spirit into that purpose or mission, right? And it's associated with the external. When we look at the masculine energy, we kind of say, oh, well, they're the providers, the leaders, the builders, the guides. But like all powerful energies, it carries a shadow, like you said. And those were really good ones. Domineering behavior is one I would add. You know, like
Yeah.
when you're in charge, but you warp that into power seeking or
Yes.
suppressing others. And another one I would add for kind of the shadow side of that is over identification with achievement. We've talked about this in other shows.
Yeah.
Mistaking their worth for success or status.
Yeah.
That kind of the darker side of that, if you're not, careful. And of course, we don't suppress masculine energy. We try to purify it, just like we do with our ego. We try to purify it so that it can sit with the soul as a team, type of thing. So we shape it through the path of Ashla, we use things like the 12 agreements to shape this energy and temper it with compassion and refine it with humility. So the balanced and healthy masculine energy is not a conqueror. It's a guardian. It's a builder. It's a protector of these sacred spaces that we should be creating for ourselves and others.
Yeah. No, that's so well said, though. because truly to tap into this energy, it's so powerful, but at the same time, it can be so misused once obtained. And I mean, we've all seen it where we have that tyrannical leader or we have that toxic relationship where one person is just so controlling of every aspect of their significant other's lives. I mean,
Yeah.
we see this everywhere, but when you have that power and you wield it responsibly, ethically, in a sense that is for not just your greater good, but everyone's, that's true leadership right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And, speaking of the feminine, again, as you said at the beginning of the show, it's the river, it's the flow, it's the current of depth and connection and creation
And the nourishment.
and the nourishment. It's that water that reflects the truth, the soil where ideals are not just born but nurtured. And again, there's a dark side here or a shadow side. I don't know if you mentioned it, but you may have codependence
Yeah.
is kind of a shadow side for the feminine, over passivity.
Well, and I love how you brought up codependence because this sort of shows sort of how these energies are so important because through codependence you enable the bad behavior of the toxic masculine. And I mean, if both these energies are strong within themselves, they can create a dynamic that empowers each
Mhm.
instead of enabling decay and the loss thereof.
Yeah. And of course, the way of Ashla, we honor this energy, the feminine energy, not as lesser or greater as conditioned by social norms throughout our lives. It's not a weakness, it's a power to receive, to hold, to perform alchemy, to transform. And again, balance is key with both of these. And they're not opposites per se, they're partners. Just like we are, they're partners. So, and again, it's about integration. We talk about integration a lot. You guys are probably sick of it, but it's important. So it's like one of the most important parts. You could hear the stuff. We can teach you. You can figure it out on your own. But if you don't integrate it, then it's kind of useless, right?
Yeah.
So
When we talk about parts work, right? The different parts of us that have coping mechanisms to help us survive in society, usually these parts are very much based in either extreme masculine or extreme feminine energies. I know I was a caretaker forever. I was constantly trying to save everyone and trying to nurture people to get their lives together, and that was not beneficial. And also with the masculine, I was also the protector. I was making excuses for people, standing up for people who kind of needed to be put in their place.
right,
And these opposing parts, when met with the opposite polarities, so you have overprotector to being empathic, but also being understanding that lessons need to be learned, you start to balance these parts out. You start to find wholeness within your decision making.
right, yeah. And many of us carry these imbalances in both of these areas, both of these energies. And it's not because we're flawed. It's not because there's something wrong with you, but because we were conditioned that way, whether that's trauma, culture, survival,
Childhood, whatever it is.
whatever it is. And it comes in all shapes and sizes, and you get dents and you get knots on your head
Yeah.
sometimes.
What I think part of that is, I mean, the cultures we're raised in. I
Hmm.
know it's like there's emphasis in certain types of gender norms, as they say, in
Right,
American culture, where again, the guy is the protector. So many men I see nowadays are afraid to express their emotions or vulnerabilities because they're afraid of being seen as weak or inadequate. And in
right,
turn, it's not good.
yeah. Well, most of us guys are taught that masculine energy must mean to be domineering, controlling, or to be like the stoic that feels nothing.
Yeah,
And all this does is cause us to suppress our emotions, our intention, our intuition, and the things we're vulnerable over.
yeah. Creates imbalances within ourselves and within our lives.
Yeah, and of course, most ladies were taught that the feminine energy means pleasing and yielding or caretaking exclusively.
No,
And what this does, the problem with this is it leads people to abandon their boundaries, to
yeah,
give up their authenticity and their own self-expression, right? And even give up their purpose for the sake of just keeping the peace.
yeah,
Not this peace that we talk about, but just peace outside of us.
yeah. No, that is so beautiful, though. Not doing that, but your description there, and then we look at a lot of again. This is You can see these energies within all sorts of different cultures, regions of psychology. Carl Jung, he talked of it as the anima and the animus,
Mm-hmm.
and these two opposing energies that need to find harmony. And the imbalance of these things is shown in so many of these texts, from the way it affects our mental health, burnout, relationship dysfunction. There's the archetypes. You have the warrior, the magician, the lover, the maiden. All these things we identify as within ourselves are these personas we wear that we feel we need to show to be accepted. And they're all heavily based within these energies.
Yeah. Well, the anima represents intuition, emotion, sensitivity, creativity. The animus is that more logical, structured, talking about push through things with willpower, assertiveness. And so from our perspective, the Ashla perspective, these things are simply facets of this inner polarity. Talking about polarity today. Every day, probably, huh?
Yeah.
That need to be brought into balance, because we talk about balance a lot. Suppressing one side, or even if you're not suppressing one side, if you're empowering one side a lot more than the other, this obviously causes a distortion in our balance, in our harmony. And it can cause us to be spiritually and emotionally fragmented and confused.
Yeah.
But when they're integrated, it's like
action and creativity. There's nothing more powerful than those two things working in harmony with one another.
Right. So did you mention cultural conditioning? I think you did.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And every culture, I'm just going to say, it's been my experience that every culture experiences this stuff. Does not just the American culture, because and what this causes. Now, we were just talking about emotional and spiritual fragmenting. This kind of conditioning creates this mental fragmentation, this psychological stress.
Yeah.
People are burning out, right? Because they're constantly doing without ever resting or receiving back what they're giving. Anxiety and depression, because they may be disconnected from direction or structure, or not allowed to self-express.
Yeah. And internally to isolation.
Yes.
And it's so predominant nowadays, because when you have this divide, whenever you're acting out of alignment with your true authentic self, and that includes expressing your needs, expressing your feelings, as well as being able to hear others, you end up dividing yourself more and more. I always look at it as like a glass plate, and the more we bend our authentic self and our true relationships, the more this glass just breaks, and we see things through such a distorted lens of all these cracks.
Yeah.
Makes you think of like
right. And archetypes, we can't talk about this topic without those, right?
Yeah.
And we see this again across cultures, and they're pretty much the same. They're a little different, but think of these archetypes as symbols of an energy in motion that just help us understand kind of what we're seeing when we're trying to balance these things out, right?
Yeah.
And these archetypes, the king, the warrior, the magician, the lover, and the maiden and mother and wild woman. That's a fun one. Wild woman.
Yeah.
And the crone. I don't like that one. That one doesn't sound good, but it sounds rude. That word.
But you know who comes to mind when you think that? Someone came to your mind.
Yeah. I know. No, I'm not saying it's not valid. It just sounds like a rude word.
Yeah.
Crone. But, and again, these aren't characters to imitate so much as they are energies to embody.
Yeah.
At the right time. Divine timing. The right place, the right time. Each has their power, and each has their lesson. So
yeah, well, and it's identification. I mean, us as people, one of the biggest traps we get into with these energies is we try to define ourselves. When we can become immutable, when we can adapt to our situations, we may not be the same person for this situation or for that situation. It's all about the more we can tap into these energies, the more when you need to take more action or be more stern, you can utilize your masculine. But if you need to be more nurturing and more creative, you can dive into the feminine. And the more you can, less rigidly you hold to these archetypes, the more free-flowing you can be in any given situation.
Yeah. And the more powerful you become, the more connected you become. The force is the thread that binds all things, including these roles and these stages of progression, even the shadow. There is no masculine without feminine, and there is no becoming without balance. You'll just spin your wheels in circles.
Or destroy yourself trying to make something out of it.
Oh, you're definitely going to be destroyed, and then maybe that's what you need sometimes. You know, who am I to know?
Yep. So, you as the listener, I want you to think about, where do you lean more heavily? Think about the situations in your life, your approaches. What is your natural responses to hard situations in your life? Do you lean more masculine, where you're more to get offended or affronted, and or do you want to shoulder all responsibility? Or do you go more into the feminine where you try to caretake everyone? You try to you lose yourself within situations to keep the peace? Focus on these things. And we're going to dive into ways to start integrating each of these sides and start building more of a foundation. But really contemplate that as you listen to this episode, because it's inevitable we all lean heavier one side or the other. And depending on how far along you are on this journey, you might be significantly heavier in one direction.
Right.
So, what are some good tools for the masculine energy when you want to start? If you have a struggle with cultivating masculine energy, or you lean more feminine, what are some ways to start cultivating that, the masculine?
Well, now that we understand, right, we've set the groundwork for, okay, we know what these are, and now, okay, but now what do I do? How do I start to balance them, right?
Yeah.
Of course, we always practice, practice, practice. Insight without integration is a big nothing burger. You have to integrate.
Got to build those muscles.
You do. So some ways that I kind of came up with for the masculine side of things. And to understand, again, this energy is directional and it's structural and it thrives on clarity and drive, push forward. So the first thing you got to do is learn to set boundaries. You got to say yes with integrity and no with clarity and stick to it. They protect your energy and help you uphold your purpose. Take consistent action. Honor your commitments. Your word is your bond. Follow through. Bring vision into reality. Create structure and discipline for yourself. Organize your time. Clarify your goals. Return to your foundational practices often. I do this all the time. Michael is somewhere over here with our teachings, and as his teacher, I might go behind him and start remembering this stuff too. Always go back to the foundational practices of whatever it is you're doing. And the other one I have for the masculine is stand in your power. Speak the truth. Defend what is right. Lead without dominating. Do it. Those are ways I came up to kind of start to purify that energy within and start to kind of bring it to where we can balance it.
And I love how you brought up structure. I know, again, I operated from a wounded feminine was my main energy I operated from. And one of the biggest things I lacked in my life was discipline and structure. And those two things went so hand in hand because you got to start building that foundation slowly. And one of my big issues is I was always trying to build this elaborate ideal for myself of what I wanted to become. And I would fall short every time because I was always trying to start at the top and work my way down. Right? All these practices, all these approaches to cultivating this, start small with structure. If you're someone who doesn't have a lot of structure in your life, incorporate one good habit into your life for the next 2 weeks. Start small and be patient with yourself. Yep. This isn't something you can rush because anything rushed will not bear fruit.
It won't.
But through creating structure, you can then develop discipline. Discipline is another one of those things where it takes time to cultivate that muscle. And again, if you try to start at the top, it's like trying to run a 10-kilometer race and you haven't gone running in 10 years. You're not going to have the stamina to reach your goals, and you're just going to be that much harder on yourself.
Self-trust. If you're me, you're going to be in an ambulance if you try that.
Yeah, right? Self-trust is something that is only cultivated when we follow through on the promises we tell ourselves. And that's why we got to start small with those little promises to cultivate that self-trust.
So I'm not going to use hand gestures because we'll probably get banned off of YouTube or wherever, everywhere we are. But we were talking about how masculine energy, I got to put my hands, I'm going to sit on my hands. Masculine energy is directional, so feminine energy is receptive. Use your imagination while I'm sitting on my hands because I was trying to do some. It brings flow and feeling and connection. Yes. So for the feminine to start to reclaim this, purify it, and help balance it, practice emotional expression. Journal your feelings. It's okay to cry, boys. It's okay to cry. And not just when your dog or your mom dies, okay? Cry when you need to. Speak your truth gently, but stand on business. Speak it fully. Remember we were talking about, was it last episode? I don't remember which one. It was one of the last two where we talked about don't use your words as weapons. It's kind of what we're talking about. Engage in movement, dance or yoga or any kind of form of free movement that awakens your body, gets you moving. You can hit the gym, just do something, move around. and try to include your entire body in this movement. Create space for intuition, meditate, get out in nature, go fishing, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And make sure you take moments to let silence speak to you, at least 5 minutes a day. If you could do that, you will see a huge difference in things after a month or so. And learn to surrender control. Let go of the need to manage literally everything. Knock it off. You need to learn to let go and trust in the timing. Trust in the flow of this energy that you're working in.
And to trust in the people in your life.
Yes.
Often when we try to control is because we don't want to have to rely on other people. And we need to learn that those we care about and keep closest to us, we can rely on. You know, you were talking about...
You heard that, right? How many times have you heard, fine, I'll just do it myself?
Yeah. Well, how many times have I said that? Like, I tell you what.
I've said it before, lots of times.
That was one of my biggest struggle areas. All my relationships before this, I would just carry everything on my back. I'll handle the bills. I'll handle the responsible things. It's going to be easier and better for my stress levels if I don't have to count on you.
Right.
Yeah. And you're talking about emotional expression, you know? Learn to state your needs. Learn to express when things upset you. Learn to express when things make you sad. Get off your high horse and allow yourself to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is one of the most important things we can learn, and it's for certain situations and with certain people. But through that vulnerability, we can get support that we never thought we could before.
Yeah. Yep.
And you know, one last thing to help with the feminine energy, find something artistic to do. Whether that's photography, painting, drawing, writing, whatever it is, find a creative outlet to start awakening this part of your mind.
Right.
Because your soul craves expression. And so many people bottle this up because they're worried they're a bad artist. Same with the dancing. They're afraid they're going to look silly and stop caring what other people think. It's all about expressing yourself in whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And once you do that, then things like communication will come much easier.
Yeah.
And it'll be much more useful in your relationships because you'll learn to speak with clarity, the masculine energy, but also empathy, the feminine energy. And you'll learn to listen with presence and respond with intention. See how these things start building upon each other, right?
Yep.
We have clarity, empathy. We have listening, but with presence. We respond with intention. So they just kind of all work together.
No, it's a beautiful dance, though. And the more we can end up, like one of the things I've thought about, and I haven't really read it anywhere, but I'm pretty sure it's true, is the right and the left hemispheres of our brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think these kind of tie into these energies. You know, the more you practice one, the more you strengthen that side of your brain.
Yeah.
And the more you can strengthen these muscles, the more you can find that harmony. Because when they work in unison, the potential of life is limitless. Whether that's starting a business, doing an endeavor of any kind, you will be assured within yourself and have the expression you need to push forward effectively.
Yeah. And again, we teach that not one of these are to dominate the other. There is a sacred dance between these two things. And when we're out of balance, we suffer. It's just that plain and simple. We suffer. When we align, we flourish. And again, balance is not something that you achieve. It's something that you live. It must be lived. It's this harmony of stillness and movement, of form and formlessness. It is the paradoxes and all these things. They're layers upon layers upon layers of balanced energies, actions, words, intentions, so on and so forth.
Beautifully said. So one of the topics I really wanted to dive into this too is relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever noticed how polarizing different relationships are? And this will also help paint a picture of what we mean by masculine and feminine energies are not genetic. It's not a matter of our gender because you see it. I know for me, most of my relationships prior to this, I always had that headstrong woman who had all that fire. So she was operating from a high masculine because I was operating from the feminine. And it's just you see these balances within relationships. Attraction. My God, the level of attraction. We're always attracted to our opposite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, polarity is a thing across all layers of life, right? And this is true with our human connections also. And like you said, at the heart of these intimate relationships is that polarity. And when that balance is disturbed, like if you were to flip polarity and start being the headstrong one, what would that do? That that
would have been a war.
Freaks out if everything freaks out. Think of magnets. right? This is the easiest thing I can think of. Think of magnets that attract through opposite charges. We all know how magnets work. If you flip them the wrong way, what do? They repel each other. When we turn them the right way, they attract each other. They come together. And if you have one person embodying more of that masculine and the other leaning into the feminine, and it could, like you just said, it doesn't matter gender or biology here, because people are what they are and who they are, and we're talking about this energy, and it doesn't always match what you think it would, because not all women are naturally more feminine in their energy, and the same with dudes. If it's working and everything's jiving, there's this kind of balance. The dance is going well.
Yeah.
But this isn't about dominance. So one of the other people can't dominate, no matter what energy they're bringing more of versus the other.
Yeah.
It just means that you guys are bringing something opposite or something different. One is this, one is that. And again, it's about this pull and repulsion of, if you're not jiving well, between this purpose and this presence and all these things.
Yeah, well, I don't even say once it's healed. Once you are in your divine masculine, divine feminine, we'll call that the positive next to the wounded. I mean, you have a flow where you guys can sort of interchange roles. I know with me and my girl, there's times where she does need to take the lead because she does have a little better organization than me. And I gotta follow her lead, which I'm okay with. And then there's times where I have to be the creative or empathetic one and hold that space. And it's a beautiful dance when you guys can operate from the non-wounded forms of these things.
Right. And going back to the archetypes, like I said, being able to throw those out, man, when you need to, when it's best suited for a situation. And that may be you or that may be her at any given time. That part's not important. You can still be a tough guy and be a crone, right? You can. I know for a fact you can.
Yep.
For a fact you can. So, you were talking about providing a container earlier, and that was so beautifully said, because it relates back to, when we were talking about how I teach you, for example, well, anybody, I provide that opened area
Yes.
that has some parameters so that it's safe, but you get to just do your thing, explore and grow and all this stuff. That's really important. And that does relate to the masculine energy.
I didn't think about it like that, but you're absolutely right. It's the exact same concept because, yeah, you created the structure that allowed me to utilize and grow and flourish within the vessel of the teachings.
Right. But on the other end of that, I also, at the same time, for you and my students, I flow energy within there, and I start to kind of just throw a little bit of stuff at you that brings out your light, your shine, your intuition, your wisdom, your creativity. So we as teachers, and you someday, when you are a teacher and you teach this path, you will need to have those energies balanced and harmonious so that you can both build the place, but also fill it with the stuff that we need, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it does.
And that's where you see kind of this good mix. When you apply that idea to people, sometimes it gets tricky, but we figure it out, don't we? With our partners, because sometimes I want to be the tough guy but Heather's better suited for the tough guy role in this situation. I will give you an example. I don't know if I told this story before.
The movie theater?
Oh, the movie theater. Okay, so the movie theater. I don't know what episode that was, but you guys look back, start at the first episode and listen to them all until you find the story.
Well, it was exactly what I was thinking when you were describing when she would take the role. Because a couple of guys were being belligerent, and it's like as much as you wanted to go lay the hammer, she went and did it in a way that was much more, probably left a greater impact on them moving forward in that type of attitude.
And I didn't go to jail, yes.
Yeah.
It was perfect. It was much better, much better. Even though my kids probably wanted me to kind of throw a little bit of, left and rights, but it was better to let her protect us in that moment. Because all she had to do was kind of get old Mama Bear on them and kind of knife hand them a little bit and let them know. And they backed off and they, effed off to some other place. So that was another perfect example. Now, if you see me and my wife together, you would think that would never be a thing because I'm gigantic next to her. And I look like the guy that would,
Look like the guy we're talking about.
Right. A align your chakras by flicking you in the third eye, right? Or something. But sometimes it's better for her to be the masculine, to bring that masculine energy up front and center and let it guide her to, serving us, her family. And you know what? You can be a tough guy and let your old lady do it.
Well, one
Because
thing I want to touch on.
sometimes she brings that heat a lot more than I could, because after doing this for so long and teaching this path for so long, I've kind of chilled way out. You know what I mean? I've kind of really chilled out more. I don't look like it, but I've chilled way out. So sometimes she's better for that, because she can drop the hammer a little better than I can, because I like to give people chance, I like to.
Nope.
So
And as we're talking about the teachings, one thing that I really appreciate about these teachings compared to what we see in the world right now, we have our society is so driven by masculinity. And you see everything from being the headstrong woman who can do everything to the alpha male programs. And I mean, our society is just so driven by masculine energy. And it's one of the reasons there's so much wounded of the both within society nowadays. And this does not mean don't go be a headstrong woman who goes and makes a career and a life for herself. That is not what I'm saying at all. But I am saying there is a balance. Same with the alpha male. There is no alpha male. I heard the real type of male we want to be is a Sigma, the lone wolf who is caretaking, can caretake a pack, who is not trying to assert dominance over a real wolf clan. We want to be the ones who are truly the protectors and not the conquerors.
Well, and yes, what you're describing is we are so out of balance, just about across the board, just about on everything, right? In the world today, in the entire earth, we are so, because here's the problem. It's like, and I won't say it's 50-50, it's probably 25 and 25% are just on the far extremes, right? Too much feminine energy, too much masculine energy. And then there's the rest of us, 50% of us in the middle going, and we're being pulled in one direction or the other.
Yeah. Well, it's like me and my girl in our little research project we're working on, we have this beautiful description of it's like for women, what is culturally acceptable now is there's this middle ground. Men are in the middle ground where they have to be assertive enough, but also they have to be caretaking enough. And unfortunately, a lot of guys are starting to fall too far into the caretaking side, which is not what appeals hormonally to women. Women, on the other hand, have two sides they fall in, which is you have the middle where the men are at and the women are here. And they either have to be the caretakers or they have to be I am independent. I don't need anyone to help me create a life. And these are the social acceptable norms. Girls have to be in this realm, men have to be in this middle sphere, and it's creating so much turmoil because with all the information out there, with the way people are being raised nowadays, it's hard to find and feel accepted for not being perfect, which does not fall into these spectrums. We need to learn how to be fluent with all of it.
Yeah. If you want to live life is all over the place. You got to learn to be what you need to be. And that's not masking. That's just rising up to the challenge, meeting reality where it is.
Yeah. Well said.
Sometimes, look, I raised 5 girls. Girls cried a lot. I cried too sometimes. I didn't always do it in front of them, especially in the very much early days, because you didn't do that. That was a no-no. You were only allowed to cry when your dog died and when your mom died. Maybe your wife or girlfriend. Maybe. That was up for debate, right? But definitely, when your mom or your dog died, you could cry. And, it's my girls growing up, they seen a lot of people passing away. They dealt with that a lot. It's just the way it was, grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, whatever. Every so often I would cry, and I would cry in front of them. I learned to do that because, at the end of the day, I was like, what is this serving me? So I have to go find some weird dark corner of my house where the spiders are and cry? No, I'm not doing that.
Well, then you don't teach it safe to show emotion. Like, I love it. I heard the perfect quote for raising children, and it was, your kids don't become who you tell them to be. They become who you are.
They become what they see. Yeah, right. So, but it's, to get back on topic here, it's just all over the place right now. And what's weird is during this, and it's probably been maybe the last, 10 years or something, that every problem or every issue has found its way, or people have found ways to politicize things. politicize spiritual things, politicize mental things, politicize, physical things. And it's like, that's not, no, we don't do that, because that doesn't meet reality where it is. The spirit is of the spirit, the mind is of the mind, the body is of the body. But somehow we have, and I'm picking on politics, but I mean, it's not just politics, but we have found ways of separating ourselves more and more and more and more away from each other.
Yeah.
As if that's some kind of badge of honor. I can outdo you. I'm going to go way over here and I want you to go way over there. Ha, see, look, I'm winning. No, you're not winning.
No. Well, I mean, not to
We,
dive too much into this topic, but it's just there is big business loves to capitalize on emotional charges because that's what people invest themselves into. And it has become such a business. News has become such a business. It always has been, but especially in the last 10 years, where they're playing on emotions, they're playing on so many heavy topics, and it's creating these divides. I mean, I love how you described that. I wrote a paper on this a year ago about how society is just fracturing more and more because we're isolating due to all these different things we define ourselves with, which then no longer matches with that much more people. And the more we try to define ourselves like that, the more we do isolate and cut that many more people who could be great for us.
yeah, allies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The sad part of it is, and then I'll bring us back on topic, I promise. The sad part of it is that more and more we are seeing things happening that really need us to kind of come together and fight together. But because we're so fragmented and we've been tricked into not liking each other. Oh, you believe this? Well, the hell with you. Oh, we're not supposed to talk. So we're going to go over here and you go over here. It's just, there's going to be a big reckoning, and then then we're going to be forced to kind of come together to survive or figure it out. But anyways, back to the topic. If you have two masculine energy peoples, and you're gonna start seeing conflict, you're gonna start seeing competition, disconnect emotionally from each other. There'll be these fights for control or leadership, and neither one of those knuckleheads are gonna stop. They're not gonna yield. They're just gonna keep fighting. And on the other side of that, if you have two people who are dominated by feminine energies in their being, you start to have this emotional overwhelm. You
Manipulation, coercion.
right, and you lack the ability to make decisions or like even know where to go. And it kind of becomes this echo chamber of feeling without any kind of grounding or coming to reality. So
It's so true. You know, if we can start creating harmony, one of the biggest issues is everyone in the world today is trying to fix the world from the outside in. And that is what this path is fixing the world from the inside out. If we can heal ourselves, that is how we're going to heal the world. That is how we're going to create true connection, communion, and change. And it's not going to be from waving sticks and banners. It's going to be from being examples and leading a life that is virtuous, is what we want to see more of in the world. The best thing we can do is be an example, and that is what's going to create the most change. That's what's going to leave the ripples. We can tell people what we want all the time, but we got to live what we teach.
right. Yes, the example. So spiritually, how does this stuff, how do we deal with this on a spiritual level?
You know, on a spiritual level, I think the most important thing is one, compassion for yourself. The more you can be honest with yourself and give yourself that compassion, this is a non-judgment thing. You know, as we talk about wounded masculine, wounded feminine, these are not bad things. There's no negativity to this. It's just understanding how we've had to show up in the world to survive. And if we can start giving ourselves that compassion, we can start making those changes, start taking those little actionable steps to bring balance back into our lives, to get in touch with our soul instead of the mask that we always talk about. Because it's these masks that really make us stand our ground in these paradigms.
Yeah.
If we can bring ourselves into union, again, this is not about male and female. This is about energies. This is about flow. This is about connection and unity within our own spirits. And in turn, we'll create that within our own sphere of influence we have, our families, our workspaces. It's amazing.
Right. Yeah. You know, one way to return to this wholeness, and it's when you stop identifying with only one half of yourself, whether that be the soul or the ego, the light or the dark or shadow, the male or the female, the yin or the yang, whatever. When you stop identifying with only one part of that and start focusing on the truth, which is you are both of those things, you are the counterpart, you are one whole being, and it's not about doubling down on what's familiar or safe or comfortable. It's found when you honor what is missing or needs refinement. So I would say nothing's ever missing. It's there. It just needs to be refined, right? And focusing on where you need uh, um, uh, healing and growing, kind of bring these things up together.
I completely agree. Do you have any closing thoughts before we jump into our affirmations and our...
I certainly do. And I hope I don't repeat anything. I try not to when we do these. As we kind of close this out, I'm going to circle back to kind of the heart of this lesson that we shared today. It's not about gender. It's not about roles that were assigned by some culture, tradition, expectation, or whatever. This is about energy. It's about learning how to feel what flows within you and where those points of resistance are within you. That's when you know that's where you focus your attention. It's about recognizing, being aware of which parts of you have been nurtured and which parts of you have been neglected. We all have those. Every human being carries both these energies, the masculine and the feminine, the protector, the nurturer, the fire and the river, the structure, but the flow. When these things fall out of balance, we fall into pain and suffering, confusion, suppression, dysfunction. But when we start to listen again and become aware, and we start listening to the voice, right? The voice taps us on the shoulder. When we start to recognize where our heart is longing to be or longing to grow, we start to listen to the wisdom of our bodies, of our minds. We begin to remember what it feels like to be whole. Start to remember. So, as I always do, I want to encourage you to start today, but start small. Don't try to master these things overnight. Just sit for a minute and try to notice, become aware of where these things are out of balance. Notice when your masculinity rises in kind of aggressiveness for no reason, or just completely shuts off and you're just silent to the world and you're silent to feelings and all these things. But on the other side of that, notice when the other part of you collapses because you're overwhelmed or you're just always trying to self-sacrifice everywhere you go and with every kind of thing that's happening to you. Don't judge it. Just become curious. Ask yourself, what am I avoiding? What do I need to reclaim? Where can I soften a bit? Where do I need to harden up a little bit? Right? So your journey back to balance and harmony is not a performance. It's a practice of witnessing, honoring, and evolving and growing. Oh, may you walk forward, not in your halves, but in your wholes, right?
Yeah.
So there you go.
When it's so beautifully said, because we need to have that. We need to focus where we can start, because if we try to shoot for the top, we're never going to accomplish anything. But if we can just become aware, like you said, curious. I love that phrasing because, again, this is no judgment. This is no condemnation of you being a wrong or broken human being. This is just about being aware of how you flowed through life, how you've shown up, and evaluating what no longer serves you.
Right.
And making those little actionable steps to start taking control of your life again.
Right. Yep.
Anything else you want to share?
Nope, that's it. I'm looking forward to your exercise. It's a long one.
Yeah. Affirmations for today. I honor both the strength of my masculine and the wisdom of my feminine. I am safe to lead with clarity and receive with openness. My masculine energy protects, provides, and creates space for my feminine to express and flow freely. I release the fear of being too much or not enough. I trust the harmony of my true essence. And then I embody divine balance, grounded in presence, flowing with purpose.
Those are good.
For our exercise today, sit or stand in a comfortable position with your feet grounded. Take 3 deep breaths and find peace. Place your right hand on your chest and your left hand on your belly. The chest represents the feminine, the belly the masculine. Close your eyes and say aloud, I welcome both the masculine and feminine within me. Tune into each hand one at a time. Focused on your chest, ask yourself, what am I feeling? What needs to be expressed or felt without judgment? This is your feminine energy, emotion, intuition, being. Then focus on your belly. Ask yourself, what do I need to feel safe? What direction or structure would serve me right now? This is your masculine energy, support, stability, doing. Lastly, breathe into balance. Visualize both energies flowing in harmony like yin and yang, light and dark, sun and moon. Feel them working together inside you, not in competition. And then end with this affirmation, I am whole. I move through life with balance, strength, and graceful surrender. Lastly, our journaling prompt. Where in my life am I over-relying on my masculine or feminine energy? And what would balance look and feel like for me? Evaluate this area. Figure out how you can bring balance into it. Just write. See what comes to you. Let it flow naturally.
That was a great exercise.
Thank you.
I'm gonna put that in my regular repertoire, my regular rotation.
Man, we need to just make a book of all our exercise and journaling prompts. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you made it this far, we hope you got as much out of this conversation as we did. This is, I know for me, one of my favorite topics. So, with love and gratitude, Ad Lucium.
Ad Lucium.